The pastor called Naomi's name in the middle of Sunday service. She smiled and stood, thinking she was about to be recognized for her years of service. But when she reached the altar, the pastor held up a bank statement. Naomi, $250,000 is missing from the church account. The sanctuary went completely silent. Naomi's smile disappeared. That's impossible. I never touched that money. Then her father stood. Her fiancé looked away. And one by one, the people Naomi had worshipped beside for years began staring at her like she was a thief. But the person who hurt her most was sitting in the front row, her own sister, Rebecca. Rebecca rushed forward, wrapped her arms around Naomi and whispered, "So sorry, sis," began to cry. But she couldn't see what Rebecca was hiding inside her handbag, the missing church bank card, and she had no idea that the woman comforting her was the woman who had destroyed her. But Rebecca had made one mistake. She thought she had fooled everyone. She forgot that God had seen everything. The pastor called Naomi's name in the middle of Sunday service. She smiled and stood, thinking she was about to be recognized for her years of service. But when she reached the altar, Pastor Daniel wasn't smiling. He held up a bank statement. Naomi, $250,000 is missing from the church outreach account. The sanctuary went silent. Naomi stared at him. What? The records show that the money was transferred using your authorization. Naomi shook her head immediately. No. Pastor, I never transferred that money. Whispers spread through the congregation. Naomi turned toward the front row. Her father, Samuel Carter, sat frozen. Beside him was Naomi's younger sister, Rebecca. Dad, Samuel slowly lowered his eyes. That hurt more than the accusation. Then Naomi looked at her fiancé, Michael. Michael, you know me. He hesitated. That hesitation broke her heart. Naomi, I don't know what to believe, filled her eyes. After years of serving this church, one bank statement had turned everyone against her. Then Rebecca rushed from the front row. Oh, Naomi. She wrapped her arms around her sister. Naomi collapsed against her. I didn't do it, Rebecca. I know, Rebecca whispered. But as Rebecca held her, one hand remained tightly pressed against her handbag. Inside it was the missing church bank card. Later that evening, Naomi sat alone in her bedroom. Her Bible rested beside her, unopened. Her phone wouldn't stop buzzing, messages, accusation, church members asking how she could steal from people who needed help. Then her father called. Naomi answered immediately. Voice was quiet. Tell me the truth, Naomi. Her heart sank. You believe them too? I saw the documents. Then look at me instead of the documents. I'm your daughter. Silence. Naomi wiped her tears. I would never steal from God's house. Samuel sighed. I want to believe you. Ended the call. She stared at her Bible. For the first time in years, she didn't want to pray. God, where were you? Across town, Rebecca entered her apartment. The crying sister from church was gone. She locked the door, placed her handbag on the table, and removed the missing bank card. Then she pulled out her phone. There was already a message waiting. Unknown number. Did she suspect anything? Rebecca smiled. She typed, nothing. Another message appeared. Good. Destroy the card tonight. Rebecca looked toward the kitchen, but before she could move, someone knocked on her door. 3 slow knocks. Rebecca froze. She wasn't expecting anyone. She quietly approached the door. Who is it? No answer. Then her phone vibrated again. This time the message made the smile disappear from her face. Unknown number. Don't open the door. Rebecca's eyes widened, because whoever had sent the message already knew someone was standing outside. Rebecca stared at the message. Don't open the door. Another knock came. Rebecca, it's me. She recognized the voice. It was Michael, Naomi's fiancé. Rebecca quickly hid the church bank card inside a kitchen drawer and opened the door. What are you doing here? Michael stepped inside. I need to ask you something about Naomi. Rebecca's face softened immediately. What happened? Michael showed her his phone. The church sent me copies of the transactions. Something doesn't make sense. Rebecca's heart began pounding. What do you mean? The money was transferred at 9:47 Friday night. So, Michael looked directly at her. Naomi was with me that night. Went silent. She couldn't have made that transfer. For the first time, Rebecca realized the evidence might not be as perfect as she thought. The next morning, Naomi woke after barely sleeping. Her Bible was still beside her. She reached for it, then stopped. Her phone rang. It was Pastor Daniel. Naomi, I need you at the church. Found something. 30 minutes later, Naomi entered Pastor Daniel's office. Her father was already there, so was Michael. Pastor Daniel placed a printed security photograph on the desk. The church computer used to authorize the transfer was accessed Friday night. Stared at the photograph. A woman was entering the church administration hallway. Her face wasn't visible, but something around her wrist was. A distinctive gold bracelet. Naomi's breathing changed. She picked up the photograph. No, her father leaned closer. What is it? Naomi's eyes filled with tears. That bracelet belonged to my mother. Samuel frowned. But your mother left that bracelet to you. She did. Slowly looked up. And it disappeared from my bedroom 3 weeks ago. Across town, Rebecca opened the kitchen drawer. The bank card was still there. Her phone vibrated. Unknown number. They found the security footage. Rebecca immediately typed how. You said the cameras were disabled. The reply came seconds later. Most of them were. Rebecca stared at the screen. Then another message appeared. Get rid of the bracelet. Rebecca instinctively touched her wrist. Her face went pale. She wasn't wearing it. Rebecca rushed into her bedroom and searched her jewelry box. Nothing. Her handbag. Nothing. Then she remembered Sunday morning. The church. She had removed the bracelet in the restroom because the clasp had become loose. Rebecca covered her mouth. Because the bracelet wasn't in her apartment, she had left it inside the church. Rebecca drove to the church immediately. She needed to find the bracelet before anyone else did. The building was almost empty when she arrived. She hurried toward the women's restroom and searched beneath the sinks. Nothing. Then she heard a voice behind her. Looking for something? Rebecca turned. Mrs. Evelyn, the elderly church cleaner, stood in the doorway. No, I just lost an earring. Mrs. Evelyn stared at her for a moment, then she reached into her apron. I found this yesterday. Rebecca's face changed. In Evelyn's hand was the gold bracelet. Rebecca quickly reached for it. That's mine. Evelyn pulled her hand back. Really? Rebecca froze. Seen Naomi wear this bracelet for years. Before Rebecca could answer, footsteps approached. Pastor Daniel entered the hallway with Naomi and Samuel. Naomi stopped when she saw the bracelet. That's it. Rebecca's heart began pounding. Pastor Daniel looked at her. Rebecca, why was Naomi's bracelet found in the church? Rebecca forced herself to remain calm. Naomi gave it to me, stared at her sister. I didn't. Silence filled the hallway, then Mrs. Evelyn spoke. There is something else. Everyone turned toward her. The night that money disappeared, I was cleaning the church. Rebecca's face went pale. Mrs. Evelyn looked directly at her. Rebecca wasn't the only person I saw here. Daniel frowned. Who else was here? Mrs. Evelyn hesitated, then she said, someone who had access to the church accounts. Naomi's eyes widened. Because only 3 people had that access, and one of them was standing in the hallway with them. Pastor Daniel looked around the hallway. Mrs. Evelyn, who did you see? The elderly woman hesitated. Deacon Thomas. Naomi's father stiffened. Thomas was the church treasurer and Samuel's closest friend for nearly 20 years. That can't be true, Samuel said. Mrs. Evelyn nodded slowly. I saw Thomas leaving the finance office that night. Rebecca came out a few minutes later. Everyone turned toward Rebecca. Rebecca shook her head. She's lying. Naomi stepped closer. Then why did you have my bracelet? Rebecca had no answer. Suddenly, Pastor Daniel's phone rang. It was Deacon Thomas. Pastor Daniel put the call on speaker. Pastor, we need to talk. Are you Thomas? There was a pause, then Thomas said quietly, Rebecca wasn't supposed to take all the blame. Rebecca's face went pale. Thomas, shut up. Everyone froze. Naomi stared at her sister. Pastor Daniel's expression hardened. What did you two do? Thomas exhaled. The money is still there. We moved it into another account. Samuel looked devastated. Thomas's next words changed everything. Rebecca told me Naomi deserved to lose everything. Slowly turned toward her sister. Tears filled her eyes. Why do you hate me this much? For a moment, Rebecca said nothing. Then she whispered, because Mom chose you. Naomi froze. Rebecca's eyes filled with years of buried anger. You still don't know what she left you, do you? What are you talking about? Rebecca looked directly at Naomi. Go home. Find Mom's old Bible. Naomi's heart began pounding. Why? Rebecca's voice dropped. The $250,000 isn't the biggest secret our mother left behind. Naomi rushed home with her father. She went straight to the closet where she had stored her mother's belongings. At the bottom of an old box was her mother's Bible. Naomi opened it, nothing. She turned the pages faster. Then an envelope slipped onto the floor. Across the front her mother had written, "For Naomi," when the truth finally comes out. Naomi's hands trembled. Inside was a letter. "My dear Naomi, if you're reading this, then Rebecca has probably discovered what I did." Naomi looked at her father. "What did Mom do?" Samuel shook his head. "I don't know." Continued reading. Her mother explained that years earlier she had discovered Rebecca secretly taking money from the family's business. She had confronted her, but Rebecca denied everything. Then came the sentence that made Naomi stop breathing. "I changed my will." Samuel's eyes widened. Their mother had left Naomi controlling ownership of the family property and savings, not because she loved Rebecca less, but because she feared Rebecca would destroy everything. Naomi finally understood. "This is why she hates me." There was something else inside the envelope. A small flash drive. Naomi connected it to her laptop. One folder appeared, REBCCA, financial records. Naomi opened it. Bank statements, transfers, dates, years of evidence. Then she noticed one document dated only 2 months before her mother's death. She opened it. Naomi's face went pale. "Dad," Samuel leaned toward the screen. "What?" Naomi pointed at one name appearing repeatedly beside Rebecca's. Deacon Thomas. Samuel stepped backward. His best friend hadn't started helping Rebecca with the church money recently. He had been helping her for years. Then Naomi noticed the final file. It was an audio recording, her mother's voice. Naomi pressed play. And the first words they heard were, "Thomas, if anything happens to me, my daughters need to know what you did." Naomi and Samuel sat frozen as the recording continued. Their mother's voice sounded weak but clear. "Thomas, I know you've been helping Rebecca take money from the family business." Samuel covered his mouth. Then Thomas's voice came through the recording. "You don't understand. Rebecca needed help." "No," their mother replied. "You helped her steal." Naomi's eyes filled with tears. Her mother had known everything. Then Thomas said something neither of them expected. "If Samuel finds out, I'll lose my best friend." Their mother answered firmly. "Then you should have thought about that before betraying him." The recording ended. For several seconds, Samuel couldn't speak. "My best friend," reached for his hand. Pastor Daniel called the police after hearing the recording. By evening, Deacon Thomas had agreed to return to the church and explain everything. Rebecca was already there. When Thomas entered, she glared at him. "You betrayed me," shook his head. "Rebecca, we betrayed them," stepped forward. "Where is the $250,000? Thomas handed Pastor Daniel a folder. "The money is untouched. Every dollar can be recovered." Naomi closed her eyes in relief, but Rebecca began crying. "I only wanted Naomi to feel what I've felt my whole life." Looked at her sister. "You could have talked to me. You wouldn't understand. Mom trusted you with everything." Naomi's voice softened. "She wasn't choosing me over you, Rebecca. She was afraid of what you were becoming." Looked away. Then Samuel asked the question nobody had answered. "Why did you help her, Thomas?" Thomas lowered his head. "At first I thought I was protecting Rebecca." Samuel stared at the man he had called his best friend for 20 years, and later Thomas slowly looked up. "Later I was protecting myself." Naomi frowned. "From what?" Thomas looked toward the Bible in Naomi's hands. "Your mother didn't put everything on that flash drive." Naomi's stomach tightened. "What else is there?" Thomas swallowed. Then he said, "Ask your father what happened the night your mother died." Slowly turned toward Samuel, and for the first time since this nightmare began, her father looked afraid. Naomi stared at her father. "Dad, what happened that night?" Samuel lowered his eyes. "Your mother called me from the hospital." Stopped crying, Samuel continued. "She told me about the missing money. She told me Thomas had been helping Rebecca." Naomi frowned. "You knew not everything." Samuel's voice broke. "Your mother begged me to confront Rebecca after she recovered." "But she never came home," Naomi whispered. Samuel shook his head. "No." Then he looked at Rebecca. "After your mother died, I found documents in her room. I knew Rebecca had taken money." Stepped back. "And you said nothing." "I had just lost my wife. I couldn't bear losing my daughter too." Began crying again. "You protected me?" Samuel nodded. "I thought I was protecting this family." Naomi's eyes filled with tears. "No, Dad, you protected the lie. The words hit Samuel hard. Thomas finally spoke. That silence is what allowed everything to continue. Samuel looked ashamed. Naomi clutched her mother's Bible against her chest. For months she had wondered why God had allowed her humiliation. Now she understood something. The truth had been buried long before that Sunday morning, and everyone had helped bury it by remaining silent. Rebecca wiped her tears. Naomi, I'm sorry. Looked at her sister. I forgive you. Looked surprised. Forgiveness doesn't mean pretending this never happened. Turned toward Pastor Daniel. I want the truth told to the church. Daniel nodded. Of it. That Sunday, Naomi returned to the sanctuary. The same congregation that had watched her accused now watched her walk toward the altar. Pastor Daniel stood beside her. But before he could speak, Rebecca unexpectedly stood from the front row. She walked toward Naomi with tears streaming down her face. Then she turned toward the congregation. Sister didn't steal that money. The church became silent. Rebecca took a trembling breath. I did. Naomi realized the moment that had once destroyed her name was about to become the moment God gave it back. Rebecca stood before the congregation, crying. I framed Naomi. Gasps filled the sanctuary. I used her authorization. I took her bracelet, and Thomas helped me move the money. Watched quietly, Rebecca wiped her face. Sister spent years protecting me, and I repaid her by destroying her name. Daniel stepped forward. The entire $250,000 has been located. Naomi did not steal a single dollar. Samuel lowered his head as tears filled his eyes. Around the sanctuary, people who had whispered about Naomi now looked ashamed. Michael walked toward her. I should have believed you. Looked at him. Yes, you should have. She took his hand. And we'll have to rebuild that trust. Rebecca and Thomas faced the consequences of what they had done. Naomi didn't ask the church to protect them. Forgiveness, she had learned, was not the same as removing accountability. Weeks later, Naomi sat alone in the sanctuary with her mother's Bible. Mrs. Evelyn quietly sat beside her. Naomi smiled. I thought God abandoned me. Mrs. Evelyn shook her head. No, child. Looked toward the altar. I kept asking him why he allowed everyone to turn against me. She opened her mother's Bible. Now I understand. God doesn't stop the betrayal. Sometimes he allows what was hidden to come into the light. Naomi forgave her father. She forgave Rebecca. But she also learned that faith did not require her to ignore the truth. Months later, Naomi returned to lead the church outreach program. The recovered $250,000 finally went where it had always belonged, to families who needed it. Before the first outreach event began, Naomi stood with her Bible in her hands. She closed her eyes and prayed. Lord, thank you for staying with me when I thought I was alone. Then she smiled. Her name had been restored. Her faith had survived. And the betrayal that was meant to destroy her had uncovered a truth her family had buried for years. Rebecca thought she had fooled everyone, but she had forgotten one thing. God had seen everything. And sometimes, the truth may arrive late, but it never arrives too late. 1 year later, Naomi stood outside the church after Sunday service. A familiar voice called her name. Naomi, she turned. Rebecca stood several feet away. She looked different, quieter, humbled. The consequences of what she had done had cost her dearly, but she had spent the past year trying to rebuild her life. I didn't know if you'd want to see me, Rebecca said. Naomi walked toward her. I forgave you a long time ago. Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. But you never trusted me again. Gently took her sister's hand. Forgiveness can happen in a moment. Trust has to be rebuilt. Nodded. Then she handed Naomi something, their mother's gold bracelet. I think this belongs with you. Stared at it. For months, that bracelet had represented betrayal. Now it reminded her of something else. The truth. Naomi hugged her sister, not because everything had been forgotten, but because healing had finally begun. Later that evening, Naomi sat beside her father on the church steps. Samuel smiled. Your mother would be proud of you. Looked toward the sky. I used to think faith meant God would keep bad things from happening to me. Samuel listened quietly. Now I know faith means trusting him even when I don't understand what he's allowing. She opened her mother's Bible. Inside was the letter that had changed everything. Naomi smiled. Her family wasn't perfect. Some wounds would take years to heal. Some trust would have to be earned again, but the truth was no longer hidden, and Naomi had learned something she would never forget. Betrayal can break a family, truth can expose it. But with accountability, forgiveness, and faith, healing can begin. Naomi closed the Bible and whispered, "Thank you, God." And this time she knew he had been there all along. The truth always comes too light. Subscribe, like, comment. Watch another story.